In 2024, is the Lexus elegant sedan still relevant? I'll show you why this one beside me might be the perfect blend of luxury and sport because of the special package it has. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Make sure you hit like and subscribe for more Lexus content. So of course, when talking about the ES350, I have to start with my favorite feature about this car, which is actually under the hood. The 3.5 liter naturally aspirated V6 not only has a regular gas demand, meaning you can just put regular gas in it, it also has close to 300 horsepower paired to an 8-speed transmission on a front wheel drive platform. And I know what you're thinking, that's a lot of horsepower for those front wheels, and you are absolutely right. Every time I drive an ES350, I legally light up those front tires because there's just so much power to it. Now, the average ES350 buyer isn't gonna push it as hard as this car can do, but it is always nice to have that power, especially from such a reliable power plant that's been in the Lexus lineup and the Toyota lineup for a number of years and has really proven to be reliable and super low maintenance. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the styling. The ES beside me, if you haven't guessed it yet, is the F Sport design package in the ultrasonic blue color. Now, the cool thing about the ultrasonic blue color is the first iteration of this color was on some legendary cars like the LFA and the Lexus ISF. And now, the newest version of it is across some of the lineup. I wouldn't say all of it, but some of the sportier looking cars in the Lexus lineup. And I like when it's paired to the ES because of a few things. One is this blacked out chrome trim that sort of outlines that F Sport grille. And that's what I always like about the F Sport and F Design packages is that grille just adds so much aggression to a car that can sometimes look otherwise, a little bit soft or not nearly as, exciting as something with some bold edges like that. On this front end, we do also have some accented vents on either side. And when you get up close to them, they do have a metallic paint. Instead of being like a piano black, it is more like a caviar or starlight mica type blacked out bit. And I like that because then it doesn't show scratches as much, it doesn't show watermarks as much. And same with the chrome. A totally blacked out chrome sometimes can show those things, but with this smoked look, you don't get that necessarily. We do have a single LED headlight as well as some frosted LED daytime running lights, as well as a few other little lights in there, probably for cornering and stuff like that. The blacked out grille is also sort of like a dark gray instead of a full black, and we have the classic L emblem on the front there. As we get up to the hood, there is some bold body lines that you can't really see on camera. One of them is this line that sort of goes from the edge and then kind of fades away as it gets to the front. And even this little divot sort of thing by the headlight just gives a little bit of that more aggression and really flows from that bumper into the hood. Also, we do have 4 parking sensors integrated into that grille and bumper across the front. Okay, so in terms of side profile and silhouette, I do want to point out, we do have the different F Sport logo. And what I mean by that is the F Sport usually has a painted background where the F Design has sort of all just that metal color. It really reminds me of the ISF that I reviewed a little bit ago that had titanium badges and there was no color to them at all, just, raw metal. And I really like the F Design for that. It reminds me of like the true F cars instead of the F Sport, which is kind of ironic because it is at a lower price point. Then we have this piano black 19-inch wheel and just a regular brake setup behind it. However, behind that is the standard suspension setup for the ES. And why I pause so much for theatrical effect is because usually an F Sport has more of a sporty suspension. So that's one of the reasons why this F Design is a really nice blend because it has that soft cushion ride of an ES, but those aggressive styling of the S Sport version. Then over to the rest. So the ES as a platform has a really wide and low sort of just platform and body lines. And you can see I'm 6'1", I tower over that C pillar and B pillar, and it's all trimmed off by a little bit of chrome and a blacked out mirror cap, the top of the mirror cap, and some chrome there as well. This one in particular, I think would look really cool with some tints, but right now it just has the factory glass. So you can just imagine if those windows were blacked out, there'd be a really nice black and blue sort of contrast. The ES, being a midsize, has a really solid door. In fact, when I compared this to the Camry, that was one of the differences. Actually, that back door is really solid. That was one of the differences between the Camry and the S when I reviewed them together. And it's all about those little details that Lexus did to sort of set this vehicle apart from its Toyota cousin. And that kind of passes on even with things like the gaps between body panels, the quality of the paint, the extra insulation on the interior. All of that makes a big difference. It does still have the classic door handle design instead of the new E-latch system. I love the new E-latch system, but some people do like a classic handle, and if so, the ES will still have that for the time being as well. Let's look at the body line. So we have this one edge that sort of goes front to back and sort of asymmetrically lines up with those handles, and then we have that roof line that flows almost like a fastback or like four-door coupes kind of thing. Which is very different from previous generations of the ES, and another reason why some of these were actually hard to tell apart in the wild versus the much bigger sibling LS. A good friend once told me that the back of a car is the most important because that's where everybody's gonna see when they're driving behind you. And the ES350 really does surprise in that sense. One being the taillights. And if you don't know already, these taillights are sort of a homage towards the LC500 taillights, where the LC uses a series of mirrors and illusions to create a similar afterburner effect, where the ES350 just has them stationary. And that's one of the only cars that we have in the lineup with this combination light design. We also have this F-Sport spoiler at the top that looks very organic and natural and doesn't look out of place or anything like that. The classic Lexus emblem, it is time to update that on this car, but that's okay. Then we have some more smoked chrome and of course the ES350 logo in the bottom corner. As we get a little lower, we'll see a painted black, actually it's more like that charcoal gray that we saw in the front, rear diffuser and some exhausts that are integrated into the rear bumper. That's becoming very rare in the automotive industry for 2024 and 2025 model years, is actually having exhaust ports because everything's becoming EV and hybrid. And we're seeing manufacturers tuck those in up under the bumper so that those cars in the future don't look super out of place. But I like seeing an exhaust, and I like seeing integrated exhausts that give you that sort of, sporty dual exhaust look. And the ES does a really good job of that. Also, while we're back here, I should mention there is 3 anchors on top of the seats for child seats. This is something that, since I don't have any kids, I forget to mention sometimes. But to the parents out there, this could still be a very practical mid-size family car for you. And because of that, and we don't have any tint here so you can actually see it, we do have 1, 2, and 3 places to be able to top anchor those child seats of yours, which I personally don't know how to do, but maybe you watching do. Into the trunk, and this is where having a front-wheel drive mid-size car has some benefits. One being size. It is absolutely massive back here. I can easily fit back there, even with another person, even though probably not, willing to do that. A couple sets of golf bags with carts for sure. The only thing is it doesn't have fold-down rear seats. And I hear this all the time on my comment section saying, why doesn't the ES have folding rear seats? And the answer is this. Cars that don't have folding rear seats actually have a quieter cabin because so much of the road noise actually comes from the back of the car in the trunk in that big empty echoey cavern that we put all of our stuff in. So cars that have the folding seats tend to have just a little bit more road noise, and the ES doesn't have that. Instead, there is a tiny pass-through that you can put your skis and 2x4s through if you need to, but for the most part, you have enough space back here for everything else. And there's even a secret feature that I'm obsessed with this year because I went 8 years of being in the automotive industry, 10 years total of being, involved with automotive, without knowing that off to the side of this car and most trunks, you can remove this little cover and reach inside, and after you feel around awkwardly a little bit, you'll find it's almost like a little hoop that you're gonna stick your finger through, and when you pull it, it can pop your gas cap. And it takes regular gas, don't forget. But you can pop your gas cap in case it's frozen or in case your battery is dead because everything is electronic nowadays, and it's an override. I mean, if we're splitting hairs, there's also another manual little hook here in case you are trapped in the trunk with another person, or if you're trying to scare your friends. Glow in the dark, that's been around forever and ever, and it's not much to write home about, but I figured I'd point it out. And also, there is a little handle here. So that's one of my things, is like, whenever I'm in a sedan and it doesn't have the power trunk, I always like put my greasy pizza fingers on the paint on that rear trunk lid. But instead, you can actually just reach here with this little handle and hook. And if you're driving a ultrasonic blue ES or even a black ES, you should probably do that so you don't scratch it. Okay, so my videographer Bhaskar just called me out saying I can't shut the trunk using the handle that I was so obsessed about, and here I am to prove to you wrong. Here we go. There it is, it's shut. It's a little awkward, but it's better than scratching your paint. Okay, getting into the ES, here's the second hack about this F-Design package, and that is the seats. So usually on an ES, you have to choose between F Sport or luxury and executive, suspension, seat, styling, etc. But on this one, even though it has that sporty exterior with the wheels, the grille, everything, the seats themselves are the luxury and executive style seats. So what I mean by that is, instead of those big bolsters that some people love and some people hate, this one is more of like sitting on your couch, where the cushion is very soft, the posture is right, there's not big bolsters, and the bolsters that are here are also really soft and not that stiff. And overall, the comfort inside the cabin is amazing, especially for the price point. In this one, we have a blacked out interior, and all of the trim is quite modern. So the wood grain that you see throughout the cabin is all like an open pore, blacked out wood look. And to me, that's like a really modern, timeless take on the classic wood grain. And because it's blacked out, it's not too overpowering. And even more importantly, that old wood grain that we saw in a lot of old Lexuses, over time, it would always show fingerprints and scratches. And I don't think this open pore stuff is gonna do that. On the doors, we have a floating door handle design with some memory seats for your mirrors and your seats. I always recommend setting that up as soon as you get your car and sit in. Do those mirrors, do the memory seats, do the steering wheel, and then that wood grain is at the top. That wraps around to the top of the dash. And even on the other accents, we have like a blacked out brushed metallic look. Again, very modern, not very overpowering. If you didn't point it out, you probably wouldn't even notice it. And we still have this really sharp samurai sword type line across the dash. I do think this used to be aluminum, but I think it's plastic now. Then in the center, we have my favorite shifter, which is the one you just squeeze your thumb, and it's just very ergonomic, and it's pretty much perfectly level with the armrest. And speaking of the armrest, this was one of the first vehicles we saw the double-sided magic illusion of a center armrest glove box. And it's really handy because you can open it from both sides, doesn't matter who you are. Inside, we have a couple USB-Cs, a wireless phone charger right here. And it's funny because sometimes, as I've watched the ES progress, without advertising it anywhere, Lexus has made that phone holder bigger and bigger, obviously to keep up with the trends. I remember when the 2016 RX came out, the phone holder was almost out of style right away because the phones got so big by the time the car came into production. And the ES has done a really good job of future-proofing that. We do have one button above that, and that is the brake hold. If you haven't used brake hold before, when you're in the drive-thru getting your Starbucks and you want to give that brake leg a break, that was a lot of brakes, you can press that button. Even in drive, you could let go and then it won't disengage until you hit the gas pedal again. In the center, we also still see that trend of brushed aluminum, a couple of cup holders, and another little fancy shelf that you can pull out the insert, and that gives you an idea of how big it is. So it's not gigantic. It'd be a good place to put pens or business cards. And there is a little trap door, a little secret trap door here, where inside we have another USB-C and a USB-A, I guess, I don't know, USB-B, I can't remember what this is called. And it's cool because it drops down into the console. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, I said console, not council this time. Console, I sometimes say council. Then we have some heated and cooled seats sort of above that. You can set all that to auto, which is what I would do. I always set everything to auto. That means my climate control, my heated seats, my cooled seats, unless I'm getting in my car and I really want it to cool down quickly, then maybe I'll hit, my cooled seat on 3 or my heated seat on 3, depending. But most of the time, I just use the auto feature, and then keep it around like the 20 degrees Celsius. Then above that, we have this new Lexus interface screen. It's not the newest one. So this one is about a generation, I would say a half a generation old, where it is a very sharp display. It is that really nice optically bonded glass. It's very quick, super easy to use. And overall, I haven't heard any complaints, and no one seems to miss that touchpad. I guess people are just keeping their fingers a little bit cleaner now, because even the hearing about like, fingerprints and stuff like that, I don't hear too many complaints. But I will give you a pro tip. Most of these Lexuses, and any Lexus in the lineup, when they get delivered to their guest, to their new owner, there's actually a screen protector on the screen that almost no dealership takes off. And in fact, we're encouraged not to take it off. And you'll notice if you ever see any micro scratches, probably there is a plastic cover on that screen still. And how you can tell is just in the bottom corner. You just kind of get your finger in there and then you can sort of peel it off. I'm not gonna do it to this one because no one has bought this one yet, but it is there. On that screen, we can see our Apple CarPlay, our Android Auto. There is a little bit of customization and you can see a few other bits of info, but nothing mind-blowing. It's not big of a distraction. Something that I always loved when this ES came out was the driver and control concept. And what that is the bond between a rider and his horse is the same as the driver and his car. And because of that, we can reach our sport, normal, and eco modes without taking our hands or eyes off of what we should be looking at, which is the road in front of us. So as you're driving, you can easily use your peripherals to change the mode you're driving in or turn off your traction control with your other hand without having to look down at a center console or anything like that. On the center, we just have our regular dash setup. It is electronic, so this actually is more like the sport model, where it is all electronic. There's some customizable gauge cluster features in there, as well as some safety features, your lane departure alert, your lane centering, your radar cruise control, your pre-collision system. Lexus includes that in all cars. You don't have to pay extra for it because it's for safety. So all that you can access from your steering wheel controls without having to look too far. And it's the classic steering wheel controls. So they're physical buttons. You can push them in. You have a little bit of dexterity to figure out which button does which. Okay, so speaking about physical buttons, there really is no shortage of them on the steering wheel or on the dash. So on the steering wheel, we have volume up and volume down. We have the push to talk button, where if you hold it, you can also use things like Siri's iFree. Then we have this little back button that also will show different menu layers and stuff like that. And then to navigate those menu layers, you're gonna use the 4 arrows to the left of that. Now, sometimes these features aren't turned on in terms of safety, so it's always good to just check once in a while over on the gear symbol. But for the most part, you're just gonna use that to navigate and set up sort of your display on that left side. Then we have a little talk button, or it's not a talk button, it's like a call button. So if you press that, it goes to your phone's home screen, or if someone calls you, you can answer it like that, etc. Then on the right side, so this is very classic, we have our last generation of cruise control. So you just sort of hit that top right corner that turns on your cruise control, then you hit set and resume, and that's how you can go up and down for cruise control speeds. Then you can just hit cancel to get rid of it. And then the radar part is in the top left. That's a physical button, and that shows you sort of the distance between you and the car in front of you. It's not necessarily car lengths, it's longer than that. Then we have our lane departure or lane centering underneath that, and then our mode for audio, and then tuner. So like if you have your presets or if you want to go next track, that's going to be these 2 arrows here. Over to the center, there is some more physical buttons, which is great. I just use the auto as I mentioned, but you could go off, you could change your fan speeds, you could change where your heat or cooling is blowing. You could do a quick defrost in the front, the rear, and recirc. And then when you actually use it, you just use the up and down wheels on either side of that. So the driver and passenger for the dual zone. And then we have some shortcut, which is super rare these days, where you can hit radio, hit media, hit seek track, all from that center console. The volume knob, however, is where it's at. And I know that sounds silly, but what I mean by that is we have the volume knob on the outer upper ring of this little dial here, and then the collar itself is the tuner. I wish more cars had a physical tuner wheel like this, because when I'm scrolling stations with this wheel, I could go and check out multiple different stations very quickly without having to think. I'm just using my intuition of my music. Is right there on that dial. Okay, so backseat comfort on the ES, and this is really where the ES outshined my favorite car in the lineup, which is the LS. And what I mean by that is because of this platform was so innovative, there's more legroom in this back seat than there is in that full-size LS. So I'm 6'1", my legs don't even come close to that seat in front of me, and there's not really much of a hump in the center, maybe just a little one for the exhaust. As a passenger in the center, your legs aren't coming up above your neck. It's all sort of really well planted. We do have just a little seat pocket in front of us. We have an armrest that folds down, which is probably how I would just leave it if I wasn't carrying 3 people in the back. I would just always have it like this. It makes it look a lot more executive. And even this armrest is all soft leather with a couple cup holders there. And what I mentioned earlier, there is a pass-through here. Couple USB-Cs sort of just in front of that center, as well as the outlet, 12 volt sort of cigarette lighter type thing. We have a couple vents above that, which you can turn on and off and blow. There isn't any heated seats or anything back here, but that's totally okay. At this price point, I know we had to make some sacrifices, and comfort hasn't been one of them. These seats are still as soft as the front. Even the armrest and door panel still has a little bit of that modern wood grain that I talked about with the open pore. We still have a little bit of brushed aluminum on the door window bezel, the floating door handle. The armrest itself is comfortable. The window, which I always forget to talk about, the window is big enough, but the way it tapers down, it sort of naturally gives you a little bit of privacy as a passenger back here. It's gonna gives you a little bit of that mystique, a little bit of that, you know, mystery of who's in the back seat of that elegant sedan. So if you haven't figured it out by now, I'm a huge fan of the ES350. And in the F design package, it sort of gives you the comfort of a luxury, meaning the suspension and the seats and some of those finishes, but the aggressive styling of the sport, and it's at a lower price. The F design is only a few $1,000s more than the premium package, which is the entry level for the ES350, and probably is the best bang for buck. If I was in the market for a mid-size sedan in the luxury lineup right now, the ES would be the most cost effective without much sacrifice, because it's cheap to run because of that regular gas front wheel drive. It has lots of power, the maintenance is great, it's super reliable and proven in that lineup. And the F design sort of blends those two worlds of sport and luxury into one. I'm Dustin Mason, thank you for watching this video. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the ES350, if you would buy one, what you think of the color, if there's any other cars I should review, and I'll see you in the next video.